What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome to Not Your Status Quo. Today, we are going to be discussing what's next for Loki on Disney+. Dave is off on assignment this week, getting to the bottom of why Sprite is so refreshing and delicious. He'll be reporting what he's found from the Lyman mines next week. So I think the biggest thing we learned this week on Loki was that what I tweeted about back on June 10th, that all the TVA employees were not created by the timekeepers, like Miss Minutes would have us believe.
Hurry! To make sure that doesn't happen, the timekeepers created the TVA and all its incredible workers.
But they are actual variants. So what does this mean for Loki, Lady Loki, everybody else? Well, it means that the TVA, just like we said, isn't telling the truth. They're the Wizard of Oz. They're the man behind the curtain. They're trying to, portray themselves as being more powerful than they actually are. But once you kind of see through that facade and know, well, the Infinity Stones don't work because they're in the quantum realm. The magic isn't working for other reasons, but, Loki is smart enough. He's going to figure it out. And I think that's going to lead to some trouble for the TVA and the timekeepers if they're actually real.
Absolutely loved your theory when you first posted it about the idea that the TVA agents were actually variants. And I guess in the back of my mind, I was kind of hoping it was true. But then at the same time, when they actually said it on the episode...
Before she even fought for them.
What? What did you say? Before she joined the TVA?
Yeah, she was just a regular person.
I was still like, oh my gosh. Like, it was still a bit of a twist because while obviously here at Not Your Status Quo, we're 100% all the time correct, never wrong. You can, write a book about every single theory that we always get correct, obviously, but it was still one of those because they didn't do that in the comics, at least not that I recall, not that I've ever seen. The TVA agents were always created specifically by the timekeepers. So once again, this is the MCU switching things up from the established lore in the comics and giving us a new twist on this story. And it was like, oh, wow. So what does that mean? You're right, Keith. What does that mean for all of these characters that we've come to know?
I have a theory on what I think that means. As Loki is piecing all of this together, he's starting to learn how to take this over. And what is the Time Variance Authority all about? Traveling through time, doing different things, being able to be where maybe you weren't before. And lately, I've been reading a lot of Loki comics on Marvel Unlimited. Wonderful thing. And during Loki, Agent of Asgard, you got to meet a lot of the different Lokis. There's tons of Lokis in the comics. You had Kid Loki, you had Lady Loki, you had Loki. But then you had Old Man Loki. And the reason I bring that up is because he was kind of the villain of the comics a little bit. And I think he might be the villain here also. The more I think about it, the more I see Loki's hand in all of the things that happen. We hear about all the Loki variants, but not a lot of the other variants. Because who does Old Man Loki know can beat him? Loki. Why do they always seem to put down the Lokis they find? Kind of put them in their place, say they're, variants and not all that strong. It's because Old Man Loki is at the heart of all of this. And at the end of this series, I have a feeling we're going to see variant Loki, or we'll call him Loki, with the Tesseract, take down the TVA as we see it now. And what's going to happen after that, there's going to be a vacuum of power, as he mentioned to Lady Loki in this episode. Oh, your major plan is just to take them down and create this vacuum of power?
Your years in the making plan was to tear the place down, create the ultimate power vacuum, and then just walk away.
But who do we know might want to take over? I think we're going to see Kang and Judge Renslayer team up at the end of this. Maybe it is a post-credit scene at the end of this series, but we're going to see them team up and say, we were fooled by Old Man Loki. Now we are going to take power, and they're going to use everything they can at their disposal to make Kang the conqueror that he is and rule the universe.
That is an excellent theory. I love it. And it's got me thinking. Do you remember when we did our Theory Palooza and also our trailer breakdown for Loki? And we were looking over all of those upcoming scenes. There was one in particular where Loki was almost campaigning in a way. He had like vote for Loki or whatever, you know, like on buttons, and he was wearing a suit. I wonder if that scene now takes place after he totally undoes the TVA and there is this vacuum of power. I wonder if Loki is trying to run in some sort of election to take over the TVA or something before Kang ends up waltzing in.
That definitely could be the case. You know, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of the multiverse opening up here, because I was thinking about something as they were talking on the train, Lady Loki and Loki. They were talking about, and I do think she's a Lady Loki now. She changed her name to Sylvie. I do think that's just an Easter egg to the comics. I do think she is another version of Loki, but I don't think she's a variant. And I'll tell you why. When they were talking on the train, and she was saying, I never really knew my mother. You know, I've been hunted by the TVA for as long as I can remember. And we've actually seen a scene in, you know, Getting to Know Sylvie that Marvel released where she's captured by the TVA as a young child. But if they really were variants of the same Loki, wouldn't they have some shared memories? Yes, they would. And these don't. Lady Loki is definitely from another universe. And the TVA obviously knows this. And maybe they're grabbing things from other universes, trying to stop other timelines where they can. And she is from another timeline. And, you know, it's all kind of going to come together for Loki when he figures that out.
This was a beautifully shot episode. I loved the colors that they used. I loved the videography that they used, and I absolutely loved the choice of planet and moon that they were on. Now, they were on the moon, Lamentis 1, of the planet Lamentis, which is in Marvel Comics. We have seen this before. It's at the edge of the Kree Empire. So this is not something they made up for the show. But I do think it was a very good choice for this show, because in a way, the sort of you know, purplish and sadness, the apocalyptic features of this, and the name, the fact that you know, Loki is in a way lamenting. He's thinking about his life. He's thinking about his choices, and you can see that he's on the train, almost like trying to drink it all the way or something. One last hurrah. You know, it's a very good choice overall. And speaking of the train, I absolutely loved this as well. I loved the conversation, the character building that we had, the fact that we're learning a little bit more, that we could actually have these two characters just sit and chat and learn a little bit more about each other. And you know how much your fellow nerds here and Not Your Status Quo love when we get a chance to learn more about these characters, and the fact that we've been able to find out about this amalgamation of, you know, this Lady Loki, which is like a combination of Lady Loki and the Enchantress, and this, you know, it's really cool that we get to learn a little bit more about this. And we also it was finally established canon in the MCU now that this version of Loki is also bisexual. It's been all over the news. He basically said it plain as day. And that really shouldn't be anything new to any of you guys who are fans of the comics and fans of this character, because that is exactly his characterization in the comics. And if you know anything about Old Norse mythology, that was exactly how Loki was in mythology as well. So it's great that they established this as canon in the MCU, but yeah, this is who Loki is.
You know, and while we were talking about getting to know Lady Loki a little better and the conversations that we had, I had a thought about what happened after they were thrown off the train. I don't think that TemPad is broken. I think that was an illusion Loki played, so she would stop trying to get it, stop trying to, you know, kill him or whatever. She knew at this point she had to work with him to get off, and that gave him time to understand her a little better and start to, you know, formulate a plan. Because I do think, you know, she kind of jokingly said plans have multiple steps to them when they were getting on the train to get to that arc to get off the planet. And I think he is a few steps ahead of what she thinks he is. And this was all part of his plan to kind of get to know her better. Hey, oh, the TemPad's broken. We better work together. They have time to talk. He has time to get to know her better and understand where she's coming from. So I don't think the TemPad is really broken. But We know at the end of this episode, they're kind of stuck here. The Ark has been destroyed. How are they going to get off planet? I think there's a few theories out there that could happen. Obviously, if the temp pad wasn't broken, they could maybe get it charged somewhere near the Ark or the power source for the Ark, and they could escape. Another option could be that the TVA shows up. We talked last week how we think Mobius and Loki are still working together, and it was all part of their plan together to have him chase after Lady Loki. And maybe they show up, they kind of know where he's at. You know, he watched all the videos. So the whole fact that he didn't know how to use it just falls a little flat for me. I think they could say, yeah, he knew exactly where he was taking her to this planet because he knew that the circumstances would force her to work with him a little more. And then the last thing I think that could be happening is we all saw Loki playing with the time stone at Casey's desk way back in episode 1. I think he still has it because if you remember the scene when they're running, that building is toppling on him and he kind of stands there and it just kind of goes back up. Very reminiscent of Doctor Strange using the time stone or Thanos using the time stone. So it appears to me that he took a stone with him, and maybe now that he's out of the quantum realm, it has its powers again.
I was thinking the same thing when I was watching the episode. I saw that building going back up and I'm like, all right, what is going on here? That is weird. And it didn't cross my mind until, I gave it a little bit of thought, talked with you, Keith, about it. And, I was watching it and I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, that would make sense because we've already seen that, once he's out of the TVA, Loki gets all of his magic back. So it would stand to reason that obviously, yes, an Infinity Stone would also work once again outside of the TVA. Now, if you really think about it, he could have taken this even further, and I'm kind of surprised that he didn't. He could have grabbed a bunch of the Infinity Stones and then imagine the amount of power that he would have had having the Time Stone, the Reality Stone, and the Power Stone even. It makes me wonder, because you had so many in that drawer, I wonder if he grabbed any of the others.
The only reason I could see him not grabbing others and using them is because he knows what happens when you use all of their powers together. I mean, it almost killed Thanos, it killed Tony Stark, and while he may not know that, he may have some understanding of the Infinity Stones and how much it would take to use them all together.
That's a fair point. But one last thing that I do want to say about it before I, shut up about the Infinity Stones for a little while. For all of you people who kept saying that drawer showing all of the Infinity Stones meant that they were dead and that was the MCU's way of closing the chapter officially on the Infinity Stones, ha ha ha. He totally used an Infinity Stone. He used a Time Stone. And so therefore it's back. Yeah!
And I'm also getting a special report directly from the Timekeepers that part of the sacred timeline is the Infinity Stones coming back. Thanos may have thought he destroyed them, but there's other ways to get Infinity Stones. And one of them is off the paperweights at the TVA.
I guess what we're going to need is for our old friend Hippie Thanos to come through and destroy the Infinity Stones with the Infinity Stones, man. And also maybe like some peace and love on his farm.
That is what we think is coming up next in Loki. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below, and we will see you next time at Not Your Status Quo.